Hello everyone and welcome to our presentation today on the Internet of Things in Gigabit City version 2.0. It's my pleasure today to be with you. My name is Kelly Caudle. I'm the program head for Cisco Academy Support Center Instructor Training Center at Stanley Community College. And it's my great pleasure to be here to be able to talk to you about what the Internet of Things is and how it's affecting our daily lives. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn my video off because looking at me is not as important as looking at what's on the slides. So I'm going to stop my video during the presentation, then I'll come back at the end of the presentation and discuss a little bit with you about it. So to begin with, what is, as we talk about the Internet of Things, what is the Internet of Things and what is IoT? IoT is the explosion of these network connected devices that we have had come on the scene in the recent years. In 2018, there were 7 billion IoT devices. 2019, it reached 26.66 billion devices. Every second, 127 new IoT devices are connected to the web. Now, that seems extremely hard to believe, but what you have to think about is that every single home video camera, every single Fitbit, every single phone, every single sensor that is placed into a vineyard or placed into a pipeline to measure pressure in that pipeline, all of those are IoT devices. So every one of those little devices make up one of those 127 new devices connected to the web every second. They believe, and it has been pretty much said, that by this year, 31 billion IoT devices will be attached to the internet. Now think about that, 31 billion. And then by 2025, 75 billion will be connected to the internet. I got these from the Security Today, an article on there, and then there's the link to figure out how to get to it. But the big thing here is we've seen in the past 5 to 10 years an explosion of the number of devices being connected to the internet. Now these devices, in fact, that right now there are more people connected and many people connected 24 hours a day to the internet. And that's obviously true because of our phones. Each consumer will have 6.58 smart devices by 2020, which I have to say that's probably low. And I'll show you why in a minute when I give you an inventory of my personal home network. All of this is possible because we're networking everything. Now, the good news is we are networking everything, which means we have access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to a huge number of resources. The bad news is those same resources can be hacked and used for nefarious purposes. So in our homes, our smart homes, we have smart sensors. We have these sensors, and I'll mention them in a minute, but the things such as Nest thermostats, which I've got one right here on my phone that if I get hot, I can just turn the temperature up or down. But these sensors that are in our homes provide us with functionality we had never dreamed of before. In many ways, we're into the world of science fiction now because we can talk to our homes. We can allow the home to say, hey, Google, turn on Kelly's lamp, and it will turn on my lamp. The big thing that we have, though, is as we attach these devices, sometimes these devices, these smart home devices, were built with ease of use instead of security as their primary function. So let's think about it. In our homes today, what do we have in terms of connected devices? Of course, we have our legacy desktop PCs, which I call those legacy, but we do have desktop PCs. We have our laptops, including especially now during the COVID-19 crisis, kids at home with laptops, kids at home with Chromebooks. We have everyone's phone connected to our network. We have tablets, security cameras. In my case, I use what is called a Blink security camera from Amazon. Connected doorbells such as Ring. A lot of people don't realize it, but even today our DVRs are connected so that we can have Netflix play through our DVRs. Our Xboxes, Nintendo Switches, and PlayStations aren't just for gaming anymore. They're also media consoles that allow us to stream Amazon Prime, allow us to do Netflix, Hulu, all of those. Security systems like Simply Safe. Now what I did is just a quick inventory on my home network to see how many devices I have. Right now there's 28 devices on my home network. Now this is if my nephew isn't visiting. I make that joke because he typically brings a tablet with him, possibly a laptop and a phone. So those numbers can go up. He sometimes brings us a Nintendo Switch also, so those numbers can go up. But think about it, I'm just an individual with a typical size home and I have 28 devices on my network. That's pretty impressive considering, 10 years ago, one computer in a home, even 15 years ago, 1 or 2 computers in a home would have been something that would have been hard to believe. So in my home, I have Nest thermostats, Philips Hue lights, Blink cameras. There are baby monitors out there. All of these devices, Simply Safe security systems, these all are created by Internet of Things devices. Some of these devices, for instance, my Blink cameras, those are small cameras that are connected wirelessly. They run on AA batteries. So they're not extremely powerful devices, and that actually gives us some issues in terms of security because it's harder to run encryption on them because they're not extremely powerful devices. But they do provide an amazing world of usefulness. For instance, I have a spinal cord injury. Sometimes it's hard for me to get up and down from a seat or to move around the house. I can say, Google, turn on X lamps or turn on these lights. And because of the home integration, Google will turn on those lights in my house. I have a nephew who has Duchenne muscular dystrophy and is confined to a wheelchair. He's able to turn on individual lights in his house using his voice. So these Internet of Things devices have made our lives extraordinarily easier and also in many ways enriched it because we can walk through the house and say, hey, turn on this music or stream this music, check the weather. It also allows us to do things like protect our house from these destructive terrorist squirrels. Take a peek here. This is a funny one. He comes up, knocks down my camera. And I don't know what it is about the Blink cameras, but for some reason they tend to attract animals. I think they must be giving off some type of radio wave that they're sensing. But this is one of the first times that I actually had a squirrel come up and flip my camera down on its face so I couldn't videotape him anymore. So I thought that was pretty humorous. Now, some of the bad things. Here's a couple items that have happened. For instance, hackers can intrude in our homes with these same cameras that we use to protect our home. You know, the Blink cameras allow you to set it up to where if we're away from the house and someone walks by a camera, it will automatically take a clip and upload that clip to the internet. So even if someone steals the camera, it doesn't matter, the clip's on the internet. However, at the same time, if those devices are not secured, people can look at those cameras and see what's going on inside the house. Likewise, those same Philips Hue bulbs that I use to be able to turn them on and off with my voice using Google Home, those bulbs have been hacked to allow someone to control those bulbs remotely. Alexa and Google Home, they're listening and recording your devices. That's what I've got here. So Google is absolutely listening to your conversations. Down on the bottom right, why Amazon Alexa is always listening to your conversations. Hacking thermostats from anywhere in the world to control temperatures in homes and buildings. A DDoS attack in Finland, which by the way, that's a distributed denial of service attack, where you take a large number of computers or devices and attack other devices with them. So for instance, honestly, IoT devices have become a favorite for distributed denial of service because I can take over hundreds of thousands of small security cameras and then have those cameras send information to the thermostat at this finished property so that people can't turn on their heat. It actually left a property without heat for a month during winter. So think about how bad that would be. And then even ridiculous things such as a fish tank sensor in a casino, which was keeping up with salinity and heat temperature in the fish tank, was compromised, and then that was actually used to then hack into the casino's computers and steal data. So these IoT devices are amazing because they give us such flexibility, but at the same time, they do open us up to being hacked. Now, there's a couple ways we can handle this. One is we could just say, okay, I'm never going to use these IoT devices. I don't think that's a realistic way to go because honestly, they are very enriching to our lives. It's so much easier to be able to turn on lights by just voicing it or to have music stream in your house by saying it. I do think with the number of devices we have, it's making it harder to secure the non-traditional location of some of these devices. In other words, they're inside of our homes, they're listening to us. And on some of them, the lack of upgradability. For instance, like the Blink cameras. The Blink cameras are very small, low powered. It's hard to do much to upgrade those. So they actually connect back to a control hub, and most of the intelligence is in that control hub instead of on the actual camera. So you can update the control hub and provide security through that hub instead of each individual camera. However, there are a couple things going on. Sometimes when we allow our devices to send data to the good guys, they actually are looking to try to find ways to better secure these devices. So while many times I will say do not participate in the anonymous collection of data, there are times it does help that it allows the companies to see what's going on and how their devices are being used. So there are good guys out there who want our data. There are a lot of bad guys too, and gals. And those are the people who want to get our personal identifiable information and use it for crimes or for identity theft or for just to make mischief. All right. So what can you do? Well, the big thing is don't be afraid of every device. Okay. Don't fall for the skies falling horror stories that you hear out there. Yes, there are horror stories out there. But if you research your IoT devices before you buy them and you buy from reputable companies that are devoted to doing security updates and patches, that's a big thing. Now, if you buy them off a Chinese website from Amazon and you don't know where they've come from, that could be a problem. But research where your IoT devices are coming from before you buy them and make sure it is a reputable dealer or reputable company. Make sure you keep your IoT firmware updated. So like my Blink cameras, it's set to automatically update. My Philips Hue lights, same thing with my Nest thermostats. In fact, I looked them today after looking at some new vulnerability on Hue lights to make sure my Hue lights were up to date, and they were. So make sure you're updating those devices in the firmware. Make absolutely sure you're using encryption on your home wireless network. If you don't know, get someone in to check your home network to make sure you're using WPA2 or WPA3. So don't use the same username and password on the applications that control your home IoT devices. So if you've got a Philips Hue, you've got a Nest, you've got Blink cameras, don't use the same username and password across all three of those vendors. Also, I avoid linking accounts across multiple vendors. So for instance, some of these IoT devices will say if you have an Amazon account, or not an Amazon, but a Facebook account, you can use that to log in, or you can link all these accounts. Now, sometimes you have to link accounts. For instance, in order for Google Home to be able to turn on and off my Hue lights, I have to link those accounts so that the Google voice commands can be passed on to the Hue control box. But as much as possible, don't link across multiple vendors. Use two-factor authentication wherever possible. Now, what does this mean? Now, typically, we're accustomed to a username and a password. But if two-factor authentication is enabled, you've got to have something else. Many times, that could be not only do you have to have the username and password when you go to log in, that device will then send you a text to a phone number that you put in that'll give you a code. And so you don't need just the username and password to authenticate, but you need the username and password being one factor, and then you need that one-time passcode being the second factor. And then last but not least, folks, just use common sense when approaching security. If something seems too good to be true, don't trust it. Err on the side of being cautious and assuming that something is not on the up and up, and that will usually help you as you try to determine what to do with your IoT devices. So folks, I hope this has been useful. I know it's been very short. I apologize for not being here in person for this event. I had to have some medical issues taken care of today. But I hope you'll actually look at this and think about IoT devices or the Internet of Things and see the great, great advances it's allowing us to have, the great opportunities there are there, and the fact that it can be used if you follow common sense security practices. Have a good day, and everyone enjoy the Q&A session that's coming up here in just a moment.